Can we please call the meeting to order? And please rise for the prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for the direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city, to make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Will you please salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can the clerk please call the roll?
Council Samaras.
Here.
Council Belanger.
Here.
Mayor Elliott.
Here.
Council Kennedy.
Here.
Council Leahy.
Here.
Council Martin.
Here.
Council Mercia.
Here.
Council Milanazzo.
Here.
Council Rourke.
Here.
9 present.
9 present. First item on the agenda, under the city clerk, are the minutes of the meeting January 28th. Motion to accept by Councilor Samaras, seconded by Councilor Leahy. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries and will be placed on file. Next item, unfinished business. Motion, Councilor Rourke. Request city take from table the following matter. Communication, appoint Selmyra Mitchell, Pollard Memorial Board of Trustees. Motion by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. This motion is not debatable. Roll call.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
No.
Mayor Elliott.
No.
Council Kennedy.
No.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
No.
Council Milanazzo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
5 yeas.
5 yeas, motion carries. City of Lowell communication and the City Council. Regarding library appointment of trustee, dear Mayor Elliott, members of the City Council, pursuant to the authority specified under Code of City of Lowell, Section 39-1, it is my pleasure that I am appointing Selmyra D. Mitchell, 34 Coburn Street, Lowell, Mass. 01850, to the Pollard Memorial Library Board of Trustees to fill the unexpired term of Thomas Kodorakis, which expires December 31st, 2014, or such time thereafter until a successor is appointed and qualified. Confirmation by the City Council is required for this appointment and is hereby requested. I would be happy to answer any inquiries you may have concerning this appointment. I have attached a resume for your review. Very truly yours, Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. What is the wish of the body?
Move approval.
Move approval by Council Milanazzo, seconded by Councilor Rourke. Discussion. Roll call.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
No.
Mayor Elliott.
No.
Council Kennedy.
No.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
No.
Council Milanazzo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
That's 5 yeas.
5 yeas, motion carries. Next item, not being 7 o'clock, we'll move to Communications from the city manager. Discussion on communications from the city manager. Council Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would it be in order to put forward a motion to send the draft Ayer City Industrial Park Urban Renewal Plan, Tanner Street area, to the Economic Development Subcommittee?
Okay. Motion by Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Rourke to send the draft Ayer City Industrial Park Urban Renewal Plan, the Tanner Street area, to the Economic Development Subcommittee. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Mayor.
Council Belanger, then Council Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question on one of the communications as far as the National Park Service, law enforcement parking. To you, Mr. Manager, so what's it, a total of 2 parking spaces on Market Street in front of the mill?
That's correct.
Okay. Is that also going to be night parking as well? Is that 24/7 or is that day, or how does this work?
I think the intention is it would be 24 hours a day. One of the, this will help the Park Service with their task as they move their law enforcement agency over into the Market Mill complex. And we see it as a benefit to the city to provide some additional police presence in that area. So,
Okay, well, my thoughts are, Mr. Manager, I mean, I hate to take anything away from businesses, but at the same time, police presence is very, very important.
Right.
And I think that supersedes what I'm talking about here, so I do support it. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Council Leahy.
Thank you. Couple of things. We're going to move this report on to, through you to the manager, to the Economic Subcommittee. Where everybody's leaving that's kind of involved with this, how do we follow up on this? It's my understanding, I mean, this is a long time in the making, so are we ready to start over there, or are we just,
Well, this is,
are we ready to do anything over there?
right.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is really the plan. It's being submitted on to the council for review, and we can, at the Economic Development Subcommittee, we can walk everyone through. I assume the committee will meet probably on the 18th of this month. I think we have another issue that we want to talk to the council about on the 18th, or the Economic Development Subcommittee. And then with that step forward, then the council could endorse the plan, and then there'll still be staff at the Planning and Development Department to move the plan forward for implementation. Mr. Bakey, do you want to add anything to that?
As the Director of Planning and Development, the 2 people who've been most instrumental in managing this project are the Environmental Officer, Sarah Brown, and the Urban Renewal Project Manager, Craig Thomas, both of whom, as far as we know, are staying with the city and will be seeing this plan through. This is the draft of the Urban Renewal Plan. We're obviously soliciting the input of the City Council on the draft before we finalize what would be the final plan, which also will be presented to the City Council, and ultimately the City Council will have to vote formally to approve the final urban renewal plan and send that to DHCD for their state approval, at which point the area will then be designated, assuming all that happens, will then be designated as an urban renewal area. And the next steps in the process will involve a number of very low-cost items in terms of beginning to set the stage for implementation. This will likely include some changes to the zoning in that area to support additional development. And the plan, as you will see when you have the chance to read through that, you'll see there's some discussion of the possibility of establishing a district improvement financing district that would allow a portion of the tax increment that's generated from new development in the area to be returned to the area that would actually be a source of financing for implementing the plan's more costly actions without tapping into the general fund of the city or impacting other taxpayers. Those are the sorts of things that would likely be some of the early implementation steps. And again, given that Sarah Brown and Craig Thomas have really shepherded this through from when it was a master planning process through to this point, and they will carry it forward through that point, I believe it will be in very good hands, even as the senior leadership changes over the next couple months.
Okay, so is it too early to say, like, do we have businesses that are ready to come in and invest and take over? I mean, there's talk about a park in there, there's talk about, you know, buying property.
you know, I read through it a couple times, so I just was wondering so we have to get the approval first, and then we start talking talks with businesses that want to come in and set up and invest in the area?
Well, I think the conversation with as potential businesses emerge, that there is no set time on that. If there's a potential candidate that may be a good fit for the area, we would introduce them to the area right now, even before we have the plan. But the concept of the plan is that there are certain changes that are necessary to implement in that area that will create a climate that is more conducive and frankly more enticing to businesses, that will make it a whole lot more likely that we will be successful in recruiting businesses to the area. And that's really the reason that you take some of these preliminary steps before you aggressively go out and try to court businesses to the area, because you want the most fertile climate that you can get so that you've got the best chance of actually attracting those businesses into the area. If you start with the businesses before you've taken any of those other steps, you may turn off somebody who might actually be a good fit once you have taken those steps. So it's really kind of a little bit of a chicken and egg process in terms of understanding when to really push on the aggressive recruiting.
All right. Well, thank you. I mean, a lot of work went into this already, you can see, and so appreciate it. And I just had a couple of questions on the, let's see. So the motion about the lights over at the Sheehy Park. Oh,
Council, you still, I think there are other questions on this particular item.
Yes.
all right, great.
So Council
Yes.
Mercia, then Council Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Adam Baggy. Was the neighborhood group, namely Carol McCarthy and that particular group of neighbors, neighborhood organization involved, that's this section of the city, did they have input into this draft plan as well?
Yes, actually, this has been an ongoing process, and we've actually had a citizen advisory committee that has helped to oversee the process all the way through. And we did include Carol McCarthy herself, sat on it representing her neighborhood group, but also because this area essentially borders very closely to the Lower Highlands neighborhood as well. We had the then president of the Lower Highlands group also sat on that citizen advisory committee. We also had some business and property owners in the area and some other interested institutional leaders who were impacted by this project also participated. So it was a pretty good group, and hopefully what we've experienced with some of the other urban renewal efforts is that we've been able to continue to work with some of those community and stakeholders and other leaders through the implementation as well as getting the plan approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Council Martin.
Thank you. I know there's been a lot of work gone into this, and I know there's been active participation from a number of groups. I know there have been citizen advisory committee meetings. I know a number of us here have been to some of those meetings. But now we've got a document. This is kind of where the rubber hits the road. I mean, properties are targeted for acquisition. Business owners are going to be concerned. So I guess, you know, if you're a business owner and your property's targeted for acquisition, maybe you agree with that, but maybe you don't. And I know we've asked for comments from the council before the end of the month. And, you know, it's been a while since we've done one of these. So my question is, what's a, you know, a proposed timeline for improvement, for approval of this plan, and what opportunities are there for adjustments as we go forward, I guess prior to adoption of the plan, if, you know, if that were the will of a majority to change anything. Maybe it's going to be fine the way it is, but maybe it isn't.
Mr. Baggy.
Well, there's kind of a number of answers to a couple of the questions in there. You know, first of all, there's absolutely nothing that is cast in stone in the plan, and in fact, that's the reason for circulating a draft both to the council, but also it is the plan to hold a open public hearing for all potential interested members of the public to weigh in. And we would hope that those would be constructive sessions, and we certainly hope that the session with the Economic Development Subcommittee will be constructive. And the goal is to actually solicit that feedback and make amendments to the plan as necessary before we get to a final one, so that ultimately the final plan that we have is inclusive of all of that input and really reflects as close to you never can quite get a consensus, but as close to a consensus as we can. Even then, at that point, even once one of these plans is adopted, as we know from working closely with the Acre Plan and the JAM Plan, each of those plans has probably had between, half a dozen and a dozen amendments over the years, because circumstances do change even after implementing, and even after getting the plan approved and implementing it. And modest amendments and sometimes more significant amendments are made along the way to reflect those changing circumstances. So that opportunity also exists going forward. We have specifically reached out to, in the form of letters to all of the property owners whose property in the draft is currently identified as a potential acquisition property. And we've invited them to have meetings with us, and a number of those property owners have taken advantage of that opportunity, and we have already sat down and discussed it with them. So I would certainly hope that there's really nothing in here that would be a surprise to anyone. And we've actually made modifications along the way, incorporating the feedback from some of those property owners. And frankly, in the case of this plan, really, and with virtually any urban renewal plan, the real objective is that we would be able to work with property owners who are interested in collaborating to implement the vision of the plan. We're not really terribly interested in acquiring property if we don't need to. If we've got a property owner who is interested in and shares the vision of the plan, then it would be far more cost-effective as well as far more likely to succeed more quickly if we can do that collaboratively and the city never needs to step in and own property. That would be an ideal outcome. And we have actually experienced some of that, particularly in the acre plan area. We experienced quite a bit of that. And I think I would certainly hope that in this area, especially given the level of involvement of a lot of the major property owners through the entire process, I'm fairly optimistic that opportunity definitely exists in this case as well.
I'm not, can I just follow up?
Yeah,
I'm not
Council Martin.
critical of the process or the plan, just trying to get a sense of the timing, for the members of the public, for the members of the council. Like, what would be a typical time frame from here to, say, submittal to DHCD?
We would expect that along the way we would probably hold that public hearing sometime in the next month or two. And depending on the feedback we receive from the council, both in the subcommittee meeting and any other feedback, that will dictate a little bit how long it will take from that public hearing point to when we would have a complete final plan that we would bring to the council. But I would assume that would be sometime this spring. At that point, as soon as the council votes to approve the plan, we would turn around very soon thereafter and submit it to DHCD. DHCD, I forget if it's 60 or 90 days, but they have a statutory amount of time that they have to review, and they actually are usually a very prompt state agency, so they usually actually respond more quickly than the amount of time they have available. So given that, I would expect that probably by the end of the summer, early fall, it would be quite likely that the plan would be fully approved, provided that is the will of the council. If the council feels they want to go in a little different direction, obviously, it will take as much or as little time as is necessary to make sure we go in that direction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion on this? We already adopted a motion to send it to the Economic Development Subcommittee, so we'll move on to the next item. Councilor Leahy, did you have another question?
One other question. I just needed to go through you to the manager. I didn't, is there one question?
Mr. Manager.
No, sorry, I didn't. As far as the National Park Police parking downtown on Market Street, I don't know if I need to put a motion in or not, but I noticed a lot of activity in the last week with UMass Lowell Police and the National Police, Parks Police. Are they doing more? I see them pulling cars over, so are they participating more, or
I don't know if I'd
what's
say,
happening with
yeah, I don't know if I'd necessarily say they're participating more, but there is an active partnership with the university, the national park, with our City of Lowell Police Department. We look upon it as really a force multiplier, that there's greater visibility, greater activity, with joint patrols, as well as helping us on various traffic stops and being sort of our eyes and ears out there if our local police or our city police are otherwise engaged.
okay, and they have like authority as
Yes, they do.
arrest authority and all that within the whole city, or do we have boundaries?
I'd have to check on that part of it. I think that, do you happen to know?
We have
We have Celeste Spinato here from the
someone from the National Park.
National Park.
Could you just state your name for the record?
Yes, Celeste Bernardo, the Superintendent of Lowell National Historical Park. And we have concurrent jurisdiction within the city of Lowell, but typically we stay within the boundary of the park. The only times that we would leave the boundary of the park is if a police officer from the city of Lowell called for assistance, and in which case we have assisted them in incidents. But primarily we stay within the city. We have not increased our traffic stops, but speeding in the downtown continues to be an issue. And so we do patrol downtown, particularly in areas where the visitor center, where people are leaving the visitor center and crossing the downtown. And that's one of the reasons we like the idea of having the vehicles on Market Street.
Sure.
Was just they'd be a visual deterrent when they're not out patrolling, because they are. I will say, Councilor Belanger, that the vehicles, I believe, are not going to be there at night because they would be unattended at that time. So we typically lock them up in an area because they have all of their equipment inside. But they would be there. Typically, our law enforcement officers work until 7 p.m. And on Tuesdays, they usually work later because we have our facilities open to the community in the evenings.
Thank you. Thank you.
Council Marcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With this specific issue that came before us in our packet, it's not on the agenda for anything here, but it seems like the National Historic Park is requesting 2 designated parking spots. So having viewed that, I would request that we refer that to the law department and the traffic engineer for the solicitor to peruse that with the traffic engineer and bring it back for the proper vote, if that's okay. I think that's what they're requesting, and so that's what I think we should do.
Okay. Motion by Council Marcia, second by Council Milonazo, to refer that communication to the law department,
Right.
city manager and law department. Mr. Manager, did you want to add something on that?
That's really what we were looking to do, is to get that on for informational purposes, but, and then have it on for a vote for next week.
Good, thank
Okay,
you.
great. All those in favor of that motion, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Further discussion on the communications for the city manager, Council Belanger.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. Just one brief point I'd like to make, how the superintendent spoke of speeding downtown, and I hear what she's saying quite clearly, but what's going to help give some relief to that is we're going to 2-way traffic downtown in the spring, late spring, early summer, Mr. Manager, I believe, in that vicinity. So
That's the hope.
I think that will help that situation too. But I always welcome police presence any way we can get it in the downtown. So thank you very much.
Further discussion? Motion by Council Belanger, second by Council Kennedy, to accept the communications and place on file. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed? Motion carries. Next item is out-of-state travel, the city manager portion of the agenda. Mr. Manager, did you have something?
There's also a license agreement with SNR Corporation.
I have out-of-state travel before that,
That's fine.
number 12.
Okay.
All those, roll call. I'm sorry, motion by Council Mercy, second by Council Milonazo to approve. Roll call.
Yes.
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 9 yeas, motion carries. Next item is the vote. Temporary license agreement for 91 PV Street. Motion to waive the full reading by Council Martin, second by Council Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And opposed, motion carries. Second reading by title. City of Lowell, vote in City Council authorizing the city manager to enter into a temporary licensing agreement with SNR Corporation with principal office at 706 Broadway Street, Lowell, Mass. 01854, for use of the city Lowell property to wit 91 PV Street for the purpose of storing Jersey barriers for the business located and owned by SNR Corporation, 706 Broadway Street. What is the wish of the body? Council Marcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, we're viewing some information in our packet about 91 PV Street, and the purpose this evening is to they're asking to enter into a lease agreement so they can store some Jersey barriers. But having said that, there's a redevelopment plan with this particular property that I don't think I knew anything about. I don't know about my colleagues, which could facilitate significant economic development plans with a piece of recreational infrastructure. So this is all news to me. I'd like to just know a little bit more about it. I'm not asking tonight if you don't have anything prepared, but even though the purpose this evening is to allow a company to store some Jersey barriers in the future, this seems like a good place for economic development, and if there's plans in the works, I like to know about that, because I really don't know. When you
Mr.
hear the
Manager?
word economic development and plans and such as this, it sounds like we want to know what's happening.
Sure.
Becky.
I know the, one of the city councilors, or city council's favorite terms is economic development, so it's usually good news. In this case, this piece of property is a piece of property the city acquired through the tax title foreclosure process this past summer. It has been identified for some time as a key access point for a future canal side walkway that would run all the way along the south side, south bank of the Pawtucket Canal from the Lord Overpass area all the way to Sheehy Park. And in order to, the interesting opportunity we have is that as part of the process of doing the land assembly and developing that, there is an opportunity, and unfortunately I'm not at liberty to disclose names or locations at the moment, but there is an opportunity to work with a company that is interested in developing a significant building in the city of Lowell that through a fairly complicated real estate transaction involving this property, we may be able to facilitate on another location, not here, a pretty significant investment in the city, which would, I think, be universally embraced as positive economic development. So as a little more information becomes able to be made public, I am sure that the council will be certainly very much brought into that fold, and I can only assure you that it will be good news when it comes forward.
We like good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Entertain a motion to accept by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Leahy. Roll call.
Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Being 7 o'clock, we'll move into the general public hearings. The first item is an order. First reading, order to discontinue a portion of Worcester Road. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Second reading by title, order in City Council to vacate, discontinue, and abandon certain public interests, rights, and easements in a portion of Worcester Road in the city of Lowell, Massachusetts. I will now open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. Those wishing to speak in favor. Could you please state your name and address for the record?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Councilors, Attorney Brian Occasion. My office is at 1 Courthouse Lane in Chelmsford, Massachusetts, and I represent the petitioner and developer ACC Realty and Corbett Development, Inc. As I'm sure you're aware, we have brought a petition to discontinue a portion of Worcester Road. That portion of Worcester Road extends from Andover Street to Surrey Lane, and there was a plan that was submitted to the clerk's office demonstrating the part that we would like abandoned. This all came about as Corbett Development, Inc.'s attempt to redevelop the property at 658 Andover Street. 658 Andover Street is known as the Worcester House. It's the oldest house on Andover Street in the city of Lowell. It's part of the National Historic Register. And I was going through my notes prior to coming here tonight, and we've been working on this project with the city since July of 2012. We met with Aaron Clausen and Steve Stoll from the Historic Board at that time. We've appeared in front of the Planning Board twice, the Historic Board once. We've met with the Law Department. We've met with Planning and Development. We've had 4 neighborhood meetings, some of which went not too good, and the last 2 actually went pretty well. The neighbors seemed to be on board with the latest proposal. And part of that proposal was allowing for the discontinuance of Worcester Road. By discontinuing Worcester Road, and I have a bigger plan here, but you have it, it allows the properties abutting to each obtain in fee the property to the center line. So that's an additional 25 feet. And that would affect 4 properties. Actually, it's upside down here. Our property owned by ACC Realty, the property owned by the Summers on Surrey Lane, the property owned by the Gabriels on Surrey Lane, and the property owned by the parents on Andover Street. And by abandoning that portion of Worcester Road, 1, would prevent any development going into Surrey Lane, and 2, that would allow ACC Realty and Corporate Development to have enough frontage to put 3 lots, 3 A&R lots at 658 Andover Street. When we first proposed this redevelopment to the neighborhood, we had a plan showing 5 lots and a plan showing 4 lots, and it required the movement of the Worcester House. And I think after taking the input from the neighbors and from the planning department and the historic board, it seems like keeping Worcester House where it is would be the most appropriate thing to do. So in doing that, by giving us these 25 feet from the abandonment or discontinuance of Worcester Road, that would allow us to have the proper set-offs around the Worcester House and still develop 2 lots on Andover Street. With the order that was provided by the City of Lowell, it required to notify the butters touching Worcester Road by constable. There was also a recommendation by Mr. Bakey that we notify all abutters within a 300-foot radius of Surrey Lane, both ends of Worcester Road, the one at Surrey Lane and the one at Andover Street. And we did do that, notified everyone. It's my understanding that most of the abutters are here, but it's my understanding that, and I'm sure they'll get up and speak, that no one is opposed, none of the abutters are opposed to the discontinuance of this road. And just to be clear, any development on this property has to be approved by the Historic Board in the City of Lowell. So there's a house further down on Andover Street that was just put up, that was just kind of shoved in a lot. I think it's on the corner of Harland and Andover, and put up. And that cannot be done on this property. The house on Worcester Road will be the Worcester House will be totally renovated, and then 2 new homes, according to the plan that we also provided, that's here, would be situated on the 2 new lots. Those homes must meet design specifications of the Historic Board, paint colors, etc. Additionally, the block between Rivercliff and Stafford, the frontage on those properties, there are 5 other homes on those properties, and their frontage are between 75 and 88 feet. All of these proposed lots will be in excess of 90 feet. Additionally, the square footage of those lots are between 11,000 and 18,000 square feet. These 3 lots would be 28,000, 23,000, and 24,000. So they fit within the neighborhood character. The frontage is similar, the lots are bigger, and the homes can be situated by the Historic Board to fit in with the neighborhood, keep the historic aspect of the Worcester House in that lot. So on behalf of my client, we would request that I believe you don't vote tonight, but that the city councilors would vote to discontinue that portion of Worcester Road between Surrey Lane and Andover Street. And if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them on behalf of my client. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Occasion. Excuse me. Other individuals wishing to speak in favor? In favor?
Fred Gabriel, 29 Surrey Lane. I'm a direct abutter. One of the questions I have is, I'm for the proposed three-house development, including the renovation of Worcester Road, or the historical property right now. My question, though, is why just this portion of Worcester Road? If you're going to say that the road is no longer needed by the city of Lowell, why not do the whole abandonment instead of breaking it up into pieces where this piece isn't used, but the other piece, which is even made less relevant by the abandonment of this portion because there's now no direct access from Andover Street. So that's the question, is why not abandon the whole of Worcester Road?
Mr. Bakey,
He knows he.
please.
Yeah.
I believe the city council in, I think it was 2000 or 2001, actually abandoned the portion north of Surrey Lane already. So it's already been abandoned. This portion was not included at that time.
Thank you. All set, Mr. Gabriel?
Do we know that as a fact, or?
Mr. Bakey was the Director of Planning Development.
I don't literally have the paperwork in front of me, but I do recall the process of doing that and the council voting on it. We obviously can dig that out and make that available to the council if you wish.
Okay. Could you please come to the podium, Mr. Gabriel?
At the time, somebody from Rivercliff Road was actually trying to do a development, and they were not able to do it because of some bylaws in the city. But I don't ever remember any kind of motion being put forth to abandon Worcester Road. So that's...
Madam Solicitor, can he contact you in the morning or contact the manager for that information on the abandonment? Would it be the law department?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. What were you saying?
Would the law department have the vote?
Clerk's
And
office would have the vote.
Yes.
Right.
So, Mr. Gabriel, why don't you contact the law department if you would like
I think
information. Mr. Manager,
I think the clerk's
Clerk
office
would have it too.
actually have that.
the actual vote.
The actual vote.
Why don't you call the clerk's office also? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Seeing and hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? Those wishing to speak in opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the hearing is closed. Council Leahy, did you have questions?
I didn't have any of the drawings in my paperwork. I didn't know if other councils would want that. I didn't get any of the plans. And my other question is, if this isn't approved, then obviously you don't have the frontage, right, for 3 lots?
Mr. Bakey.
The abandonment would enable the proponents to bring forward an approval not required plan that would allow them to create the 3 lots without subsequent subdivision control or any special permit hearings before the planning board or the zoning board of appeals. If the abandonment is not approved by the city council, they would not have sufficient frontage for 3 by right approval not required lots, but an avenue would still be available to them through a special permit process to seek a reduction in the required frontage prior to developing the 3 lots. I think the greater question becomes how that would impact the historic house. I haven't personally looked at exactly whether the lotting that would be necessary for the reduced frontage would impact the historic house at all or not. So the simplest path forward for them is to approve the abandonment, which would allow for the approval not required subdivision.
Okay.
Further questions, discussion? This has to go to the clerk for a week, and then it'll come back to the city council. So motion to refer to the clerk by Council Samaras, second by Council Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Council Martin?
Just to point out, I think, I'm in favor of moving forward with this. I think most others are. I understand the process. It needs to go to the clerk's office. If it turns out that the portion north of Surrey Lane is not abandoned, the portion of Worcester Road north of Surrey Lane is not abandoned, the council could take that up on its own initiative and start that process. So I would recommend that if that turns out to not be the case, but we can wait and get the vote, see if that vote actually happened in 2001 or not. So I think these things can both proceed on parallel tracks, and I'm in favor of sending the matter on to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Council Mercia?
This is a situation that is a little bit refreshing to me, as a matter of fact, because I don't see those against those 4, button heads back and forth. It seems like everybody's on the same page. I know it didn't start out that way. It was a very tumultuous type of a setting here at one point. But we do have a very historic home, very beautiful when you go by and you look at it. It needs a lot of work and nobody lives there, so I'm sure that the developer will refurbish that, and that'll be a beautiful home for someone to live in, along with new growth is what we call it. New growth in such a way that it conforms with the specifications. Neighbors are amenable to it. And I'm happy to see that this is the way that it is. So I'll be looking forward for this to come back so that we could start the process going. So congratulations to everyone involved. It's nice to see unity here this evening. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion on this item? Council Belanger?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to echo Councilor Mercy's comments. In my time on the ZBA, I saw several projects like this, and it was a lot of work on both sides of this, both the applicant and the abutters. And when nobody's here tonight in opposition tells me the applicant has done their due diligence in response to the neighborhood and the cities and historic board requirements. So I commend all involved, and I look forward to in front of us in a week. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So this item will be back before the council on February 11th, and the clerk's indicated he will include that vote from 2011 regarding
Your
the
Honor.
other portion of abandonment. Council Leahy?
I just wanted to make one more comment since other people are commenting. I just kind of, and this is my personal view on it. So once this is approved, it still has to go to the historical board and historic board and all that, because
Correct.
I just find it kind of amusing that it's the oldest property on Andover Street, and, we're to build on that, I just don't see the frontage being cut down to 3 lots there. So it's probably not up to us, but we do have to approve it, and to keep the character of the neighborhood, I don't know why, the plan wouldn't just call for 2 house lots. That would be the most appropriate building for that section of the neighborhood. But, whether it passes or not, it still goes on to the historic board, and do they have a say on lot sizes?
The historic board does not, they have input on paint color, style, correct, Mr. Bakey? Go ahead, Mr.
You had it under control there, Mayor, but they're involved in architectural design review. They're not involved, they don't have any authority or jurisdiction over the lot lines or the property boundaries or subdivision. That authority rests first with the city council in terms of establishing the zoning, which sets the rules for what dimensions are acceptable, and then with the planning board for actually implementing subdivision actions in conformance with the rules that are set by the city council as well as the planning board's rules.
All right, because this isn't the first time I've said it, that, in neighborhoods, we set zoning laws that are supposed to conform to the neighborhood, but they clearly don't. And maybe that's just my opinion, but when you take all those houses in that section of the street must have 100 or so, 130, 125 foot of frontage. And then here we go again, cutting it down to 75, 80 feet. It just doesn't seem right, so we'll see where it goes.
Again, once it comes back to the city
Yeah, it
council
will,
and we
but-
vote it, it goes to both planning and historic board,
All right.
correct?
No,
It's not going to the planning board?
If this is approved, just to be
The
clear, so
subdivision.
everybody understands, if this is approved, the applicant will have the ability to do a 3-lot subdivision as of right. To get the 3 lots they're asking for, if the abandonment is approved, they will not go back to the planning board. However, if they were to do anything more than the 3 lots that they are now presenting to you and they presented to the neighborhood, that would have to go back to the planning board under any circumstances, even if you do the abandonment. So, and just to clarify, Councilor Leahy, I believe the attorney for the proponents made this observation as well. The dimensions that would be associated with the lots they are proposing are generally either equal to or actually, in many cases, in excess of the norms in that area, even dividing this into 3 lots. These are extremely deep lots.
I know
Therefore,
they're
there's a
deep,
lot
but don't tell me
of
that,
square footage there.
I don't want to get in debate on the frontage, but don't tell me that the lots all around there are 80 feet long. The frontage is a lot longer, so that's my point. And we go into neighborhoods and we chop them up these lots, and we destroy the neighborhoods. This is the oldest house on Andover Street, and I just, it's not personal to anybody here, but it's just what we do in the city. We go in and we ruin a historic lot, and that's my observation.
Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that it's helpful to look at this project from the very beginning, when it was a 5-lot subdivision and when it had lots that were just kind of gerrymandered or tucked in there that didn't, and that were, in my view, unsuitable, I think, with the original plan. And so now we're down to 3 lots that have 90 feet of frontage, which is in compliance with the dimensional requirements of the zone. And so you'll have 2 new homes, the taxes from those 2 new homes. The historical house that's vacant will be refurbished, and so that's all good. So I think that if you look at where this project was when it first started out and where it is today, that it's come a long way, and I think it's all been positive. And I think it's probably worth pointing out to Mr. Gabriel that it isn't possible for us to include more of Worcester Road this evening for the discontinuance, that we could discontinue a smaller amount but not a greater amount. But as Councilor Martin said, if we can get that information for next week, then we could probably just start that process if it hasn't been done in 2001. So I think, in closing, Mr. Mayor, that this is a good project and that it's 2 new homes. I think that the homes will be, they have to be in compliance with the historical board, and I think it's important that that historical home will be refurbished and be usable.
Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. The opposed? Motion carries. This item will be referred to the clerk's office for 1 week. Still being after 7 o'clock, we're moving into the next public hearing. First reading is an ordinance to amend Chapter 222.15 Panhandling in the Downtown Lowell Historic District. Motion to waive the full reading by Counsel Rourke, seconded by Counsel Samaras. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Second reading by title. Ordinance and City Council, an ordinance amending City Code of Ordinances, City of Lowell, Massachusetts, with respect to Chapter 222, entitled Peace and Good Order, by amending Chapter 222.15, entitled Panhandling in the Downtown Lowell Historic Area. Now open the hearing, public hearing. Oh, excuse me, there was one amendment to, on page 2. A slight amendment is to add, on the second line, to add garages to that paragraph. So it will read, it'll just include those items, any cafe, restaurant, business, bank, automatic telemachine facility, and then garages will be added to that. Okay. We don't need a motion on that, do we? Madam Solicitor, do we need an amendment to this to include that?
Perhaps just once the council has had an opportunity to go through the entire ordinance and hear from the public, that's a motion that can be made at the very end, assuming that the motion
Okay.
passes.
Will do. Okay, I'll now open the hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. Those wishing to speak in favor? Those wishing to speak in favor? Seeing none, that portion of the hearing is closed. Those wishing to speak in opposition? Those wishing to speak in opposition? If you could kindly state your name and address.
Sure. Troy
record.
Betancourt, 1955 Middlesex Street. So we're not really here to talk about, I'm not really here to talk about the ordinance that passed last year and with the previous city council, but I did have some questions I wanted to ask the council regarding the changes that you're going to vote on with the revisions. So in the definition of aggressive, I noticed that sign holding was also included in the definition of aggressive for panhandling. So my question with that is, how threatening is holding a sign 20 feet from a bus stop or a bus stop or say the garage? If you add that, how threatening is that exactly? That's one question that I have. Also, it was recently reported, I read that there were 237 calls related to panhandling in the last 11 months, at least that's what the paper reported. So I was wondering how many of these all of these instances weren't already picked up and prohibited by existing disorderly conduct, assault, which means fear of bodily harm. So if somebody came to your car or approached you and you were scared, that's assault. Or any battery charges, so if anybody actually touched you. So I was wondering, like, of those 237 calls regarding the panhandling, how the existing laws didn't address those issues. That's something I'm curious about. And also, how is it that we're not able to enforce the existing disorderly conduct, assault, and battery laws? Like, what's not happening in the city that when these calls are coming in, law enforcement isn't responding and able to address it, appropriately with, laws that exist in the Commonwealth, not specifically to Lowell, but just in the Commonwealth in general. So I kind of want to know, like, what's the problem that law enforcement is experiencing with that? And I think lastly, something, folks don't realize with this revision is the deletion of the exemption, which now broadens the ordinance to include nonprofits, religious, civic, or benevolent organizations, which means solicitation of any item or value, money, etc., in immediate donation of money or exchange or attempting to sell an item. Let's be clear, this is about the Salvation Army, this could be about Girl Scout cookies, this could be about a kid downtown asking me to buy a candy bar. I mean, that's pretty much how it gets translated. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't pretend to be a lawyer, but I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. Also, like, the Rotary, for example, with their donation bucket, it sounds like with the deletion of that exemption, everybody would be included in that. I mean, I'm not clear. I'd like to know if that's true or not. And also, in the revision that you're going to vote on, it was revised to say at police discretion, which means there's going to be no guidance, which will allow officers to enforce the law given their own personal discretion. So that basically means, in my opinion, that the Girl Scouts, the Salvation Army, and the Rotary Club's bucket probably isn't going to be stopped, because that's pretty much what it means to leave it to police discretion. I mean, they're going to pretty much pick and choose how this gets enforced. And having said that, what's the plan for the city to perhaps bring, maybe provide some training with law enforcement around, what's disorderly, how this, how panhandling is different, and how it can be addressed appropriately. So if you could talk a little bit about that, it would help me, and I think some other people probably, these aren't just my questions, but I brought them to your attention, so thank you.
Madam Solicitor, do you want to address, we'll try to take these in somewhat order. The sign holding was included. Do you want to just talk about generally the ordinance and some of the changes? And
Sure. The ordinance is, in essence, there are two major components to the ordinance. One, the changes that are before the council this evening also include aggressive panhandling, and the original ordinance really was focused on the downtown. With respect to the downtown, in answer to really several of the questions, the city's approach to this in terms of generic panhandling is very limited. And it's what has been added here is the aggressive panhandling. With respect to specific instances such as sign holding, it's sign holding plus aggressive behavior that was listed elsewhere. With respect to other nonprofits that are not exempt from the downtown area, again, it's just in a limited area in which they are not exempt, and nothing would prevent, say, the Salvation Army or the Girl Scouts from contacting a Market Basket store or property that is privately owned within the downtown and setting up their charitable event there. So there are many options available to charities as well as someone else that might want to do that and get permission from the property owner. But I think what's important to keep in mind also, and the council is well aware of this already, but we have listed in the preamble the number of instances throughout the downtown in which those visiting the downtown, working in the downtown, shopping in the downtown have been subjected to instances of aggressive panhandling and also generic panhandling. Other jurisdictions have supported limited measures such as the ones that are being proposed here tonight that limit, again, this sort of generic panhandling behavior in limited areas such as the downtown. It certainly does have an impact on economic development. It's something that we've talked about tonight in other contexts, but this is another aspect of it as well. Having an area for commercial activity that is safe and people feel comfortable using it. And there have also been numerous instances that are all on file with the police department in the hundreds, where the behavior has been aggressive in nature, from banging on vehicle windows and the like. So I think that we certainly are sensitive to and understand the concerns that are raised by taking any measures of this kind. And as a result of that, we have spent a long time going through this, and in fact coming back with revisions before the council. But there also is a necessity for, in this city at this time, for additional law enforcement help. And with respect to I guess the last question that you had raised in terms of the sufficiency of other laws that we have on the books, those laws are obviously valuable. The police do get trained in many of these areas on an ongoing basis, but like many other communities, from Worcester to really all across the country, communities have recognized that existing laws are not necessarily sufficient on their own to be able to adequately address these types of needs. And so those would be the responses.
Okay,
Thank you, Madam Solicitor.
so it sounds like that it would be okay if, say, the Salvation Army asked, say, Wings downtown, if they could be by, inside to, have their bucket, but not necessarily have the Salvation Army on the sidewalk in front of CVS. That's kind of what it sounds like to me, that they'd have to be on the property because the sidewalk is kind of public, I would think. And also, or they say, if St. Anne's wanted to give permission to, to have people hold signs on the corner there, I mean, it sounds like they could go ahead and do that. That's what I'm hearing. And also, as far as, I don't think my question was answered about the, of the 237 calls that were made with respect to aggressive panhandling that was aggressive, I asked how the, how the harassment and assault law, laws that are in place, how did that apply? And how is this going to change that? Because I would think that, assault is basically if I come at you, if I approach you and I get scared. That's what I believe assault to be. Battery is if I start banging on your car window, and harassment is if I keep saying no and you follow me, right? Or if you call me names. So I'm wondering, of those 237 calls, why weren't the existing laws, or how were they addressed, and where was it lacking that we need this?
Madam Solicitor.
Sure. Well, again, there are two parts to the ordinance, and part of the ordinance, that part of the ordinance that refers to the downtown, is not in any way limited to aggressive panhandling, and I think that's really where your question lies. So there is behavior that does have an impact on economic development, on the ability to attract tourism and keep tourism in a limited area. Again, these are other communities have taken these steps under these conditions. It has gone through the judicial system, and the courts have recognized that that there is behavior that might not be currently covered under our penal system or legal system, criminal system, but it is within the right of a community to nevertheless address it in another way. And this is the way in which other communities have addressed it. There's 2 other jurisdictions that have addressed it in this way. As far as the aggressive behavior, that is, again, it's a continuation of this, but it's very specific. And I think that it is communities that have adopted these measures have found that it is a useful tool if somebody is, say, spending time around an ATM. They might not be aggressive, but by the very nature of their sort of geographic location, courts have recognized that that is, quote, can be defined as aggressive behavior, making people feel somewhat threatened as they're literally getting money from the machine.
I agree with you 100%.
The number of instances, again, throughout the city have been numerous. They're continuous and they're ongoing, and so that's what the ordinance, pursuant to the council's request, is designed to address.
I agree with that 100%.
Thank you, Madam Solicitor.
I agree with that 100%. I could tell you a story, but when I was on Middlesex Street, Washington Bank, at night, and there was somebody outside the ATM and at night, and I was pretty terrified. And it's happened before, TD Bank downtown at night. My office is right on the corner of Central Market. I get that. I'm not saying it's not happening. I totally understand it's happening. What I don't understand is, if I called 911 and what am I going to, I would think that the police would respond to that because we already have laws in place. I mean, that's my question, but thank you for your answer. And I think the last thing was just around the discretion of law enforcement, meaning, which I interpret this, and maybe I'm mistaken, and you can offer me some clarity, but I understand that to mean that police get to pick and choose. So that's what at their discretion means. Am I incorrect?
Madam Solicitor.
Thanks. I can understand how there could be a reading along those lines, but the intent of this is quite the contrary. The intent is that this, like any of the other laws that we have in the city, are to be applied equally, and the word discretion in there is not there to allow the police department or other law enforcement to, quote, pick and choose, but it is to allow them to exercise their professional discretion in determining what behavior falls under this ordinance and what doesn't. But I think what you're getting at is, is this some other way of allowing the police to not enforce it when it comes to the Girl Scouts or the other charitable organizations such as the Salvation Army? And the answer to that is no.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Wishing to speak in opposition?
Yes, my name's Marty Laurie. I live in the city, 93 West Wind Road. Several months ago, I introduced this to the city council. And as of right now, this ordinance has gone way off from what I originally suggested to the council. I was receiving calls from downtown, Bridge Street, Plain Street, and right now this ordinance only covers downtown. Now we're deciding what is aggressive behavior. And I feel we've really gone off track. What's aggressive behavior? To me, that's up to the individual who's being approached, and we shouldn't define it. And I'm not an attorney, but who am I to say when I put this motion in how someone feels when they're approached? What's aggressive behavior? If I talked to one individual, he said, I go downtown for coffee, it costs me $7. How many times do you approach an individual? You come in to work in the morning, you've approached. Same person hits you at lunch and at break. Aggressive behavior, to me, isn't only the act that you're taking in front of the individual, but how many times you've come. How many business owners downtown have someone, or even on Plain Street or Bridge Street, someone panhandling outside their store, and they have customers coming in? I'm not coming anymore. Well, the panhandlers aren't showing really aggressive behavior towards the people, but it's the number of times they approach, the times of days, and it's killing this city. It was killing I had people on Bridge Street call me and tell me they were in the drive-up windows and people are banging on their windows. You come off the exits out on Plain Street, and people were knocking on windows of the cars. My question is, if you slide into that person and bump them, you won't hear from the ACLU, you're going to hear from another attorney. That's my guess. But that's the only problem I have with the ordinance. Now we're going to add garages. Well, every time we add something, in my mind, and I'm not an attorney, we delete rights of others. Every time we define what aggressive behavior is, we are now taking away the right of an individual to say this is aggressive. 230 calls, 240 calls. That's an incredible amount for a city this size. And I bet if you really looked at the statistics, you're probably talking about a handful of people. When I put the motion in, and I know when people panhandle, many are down on their luck, it could be drugs, it could be alcohol, and I said at the time, it is the discretion of the police officer. If he comes to the call and someone says, listen, I haven't had anything to eat, bring him to a food bank. You don't have to give him a $50 ticket. That's up to the discretion of the officer, in my opinion. If the person says, I'm going through a bad time, I'm an alcoholic, I have a drug addiction, bring him for treatment. That's what I wanted to see. That's what I would like to see. Reach out and try to help the person, not just give him a $50 ticket. And of course, if the person acts up or becoming a problem, then of course it's the discretion of the police officer. But I came here tonight because I feel that this ordinance has really become narrowed. People out on Plain Street now aren't covered, though many of those businesses are private property, and they can put up a sign, no loitering, no solicitation. But for others who have sidewalks, who have their businesses on a sidewalk, and it's hurting them, their economy just as much as it is downtown. When I put the motion in, I did specifically say aggressive behavior. But now I question, do we have the right to decide what aggressive behavior is? What aggressive is to me may not be aggressive to someone else. It may be aggressive to an elderly individual, or much older than myself anyway. That's the problem I have where this ordinance is going. And I know the American Civil Liberties Union, I guess, has contacted the city. They may challenge it. But I'm really afraid we're getting away from the individual right of a person to call the police because of where they are or how the person approached them, or the number of times the person approached them. And as I said, when I put this motion in, it's to help people too. The police can take them to a food bank, and if someone feels bad, cut a check to the food banks. You know, if you want to CTI, the food banks, the Salvation Army. The past 2 years, I collected money for the Salvation Army, the kettle, and there's a huge difference. We don't approach people in the parking lot when I'm ringing a bell. Same with the Girl Scouts, same with the Little Leagues, the youth leagues. They stand in one location and you approach them. And they'll say, would you like to donate? But you approach them. They don't approach you. And I think there's a huge difference. We're starting to talk apples and oranges. And I just like to, just to add those few words and ask the council to take a look at that. But again, many of these people are hurting. There are sicknesses out there, the alcoholism, the drug addiction. Some people said, oh, I was going after the poor and I don't care. You know, last year I put in 2 motions, one to ask the governor to raise the money for mental health spending in this country, and one to send to Congress. And both the federal governments and the state government has added more money to the coffers this year. So I do understand there are some issues with many individuals, and I know our police department, I know in my heart, if they approach them and it's for food, they can take them to a food bank or take them to try to get help. But again, in my mind, whenever we narrow the locations or what aggressive behavior is, we're taking rights away from those people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition. I just want to remind all of our speakers we do have a 5-minute rule.
Emmanuel Andrade, 165 Methuen Street in Lowell. The same token is the definition of aggressive. I could be walking downtown with my wife for dinner, and she could just walk by somebody who's panhandling, and she could feel threatened and aggressive, even though they didn't do anything. So it's pretty broad of what aggressive is. It's kind of like a language that any lawyer would jump at it. You know, also, what happens when we enforce these laws downtown? It's just going to bring these people not outside of the city, but into the suburbs, into other businesses, like you said, that will be suffering, that doesn't have these particular laws like we have downtown. I understand we want to bring business downtown to be viable and happy, but it's just too broad. And also, going back to Troy over there, his meaning in the sense of it leaves it to the police to kind of determine what to do with these people. If you know, they're people too, in the sense of like the cops. They're gonna, you know, if they're having a bad day and somebody doesn't appear like they want them to appear, they might rough them up or whatever the case may be. Or if you're having a good day, you might just say, hey, you know, just scoot along, whatever, or help them out, bring them to a clinic or whatever the case may be. It's just too broad too, like at his discretion. And also to wrap it up is, you know, Salvation Army and at CAP we do a Salvation Army event every year downtown at Copies Cattle, and we take donations. Is that how's that going to work when people are being solicited for donations via radio, and also in the street? Would that be inclusive or exclusive? How are we going to handle that? Because that's one of the biggest events that we have in the city, especially during Christmas, that brings, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars into the Salvation Army Bank. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the hearing is closed. What is the wish of the body? Council Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have a certain type of a person that would put all their money together and try to have their American dream other than owning your home, and it's owning a business, and these people are called business owners, and some of them are downtown, others are in different neighborhoods in the city. And time again, they ask us to please help them, and we ask them what their problems are, and a lot of times they tell us, we want to make it in this city, but there's certain things that happen that deter us from doing that. And when we look at the big picture, we find out that there are people that solicit funds, try to earn a living through trying to get some money and stand in front of the business, and it kind of deters people from going into that business. So we do what we can as a council to try to reinforce ordinances, and then we find out that this type of thing is unheard of. You can't take away their rights. And I say to myself, that's kind of strange, because you're taking away the rights of the person that's trying to earn a living by means of owning a business to solicit customers in there to sell their product, and there are others that are trying to deter that. But we can't go that route, so we have to do something else. Because we hear of other stories too, and other stories, a young woman goes into a parking garage on Market Street, and she's followed in there by two people that are soliciting money from her. Rather than confront them and say, I just don't have it, she's fearful and gives them money. I call it a shakedown is what I call it. And what about her rights? This is why we're doing what we can to reinforce a law to protect people and help the police with a tool that they can use to stop stuff like this. We heard from a mother whose 19-year-old son had his first real good job. Not that it paid that much, but he was happy to be able to put money in the bank. And one Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, he goes to an ATM machine on a Sunday morning in broad daylight, and two people follow him into the ATM machine. Rather than confront them again, he gives them money. I call that, again, a shakedown. I call it a little bit intimidating. I think this is wrong. I think we need laws to stop things like this. Maybe they weren't going to hurt him, but that's not the chance that I would have wanted to take. We do have organizations such as the Salvation Army, and I could go on and on and on, the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, that helps people out. There are ways that we can help people. Every single day on Summer Street, right next door to where I work, there's a food feeding place at the Elliott Church. People gather and go in, and they have a decent meal every single day. They probably eat better than I do, because I don't have time to really cook. But the fact remains that we have an obligation to protect people in such a way that we create ordinances that help them, so that we can put a stop people from intimidating people, whether you're elderly or you're a woman that is coming into the downtown to try to be a customer to the businesses there. This is how we know how to help. I'm sorry that people are hungry and come to the podium and try to do what they can to stop us from doing this, but we can nitpick and try to dissect things, but the bottom line is, I don't think it's fair that people should be in fear of two people together. That's what that ordinance says. When two people come together in a secluded place, being an ATM machine, being a parking garage, then we have to do something about it. And people say, you're not doing anything. All you're doing is other things. This is a very important issue. We're trying to protect the businesses. We're trying to protect citizens in this city. And to not do that would be something that we're not fulfilling our obligation. So I move approval on this ordinance.
Motion approved by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Belanger. On the motion, Councilor?
Yeah, I would like to say a few words. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, this ordinance was brought to the council for a reason. This problem, not only in the downtown, but throughout the city, was far beyond nuisance levels. I'm sorry. In the downtown in particular, I've run into several people, females in particular, who were petrified, I mean shaking, over this matter. These people got more brazen and more brazen as time went on. I'm sorry, I seen it firsthand. Okay, downtown Lowell is where our visitors and tourists come. We need to make it a good experience for them as best we can. So that's why this ordinance was put in place. I supported it back when I was a councilor-elect from a business perspective. And it was, again, brought in front of this council for a reason. Now, the city of Lowell has approximately 25 properties that include group homes, homeless shelters, detoxification facilities, food banks. We have services here to address people in need. We are the social service capital of the region, if you want my opinion. And in some instances, we're victimized by that. It trickles down, it contributes to the amount of panhandlers you do have. I mean, we are a city, these services are necessary, I agree. But that is a contributor to this problem. In the downtown, what we need to understand is that there's no land. People own their buildings, that's it. They need protection from the city. The McDonald's on Plain Street or the McDonald's on Bridge Street is privately owned. If somebody's panhandling in their drive-thru in their parking lot, they can kick them out. They can call the police and have them removed. Well, downtown businesses cannot. It's on city sidewalks. They are sitting ducks. So they needed relief. So I do support this motion. It's necessary. It's a necessary evil. Unfortunately, that's why it was brought forth. So I do support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Roll call.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
9 yeas, ordinance passes. Next item, still under public hearing, is a utility public hearing. Having disposed of that, according to the solicitor, we have to amend the ordinance to include the word garages.
Yes.
Motion by Councilor
Right.
Mercia, second by Councilor Milonazo. Motion to amend. Roll call. All those in favor? Let's go roll call on the amendment to include the one word garages.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Mayor Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
9 yeas.
9 yeas, motion carries. Okay, we'll go right into the, I'll get to that a little bit. Under utility public hearing, it's been advertised. Second reading is National Grid electrical main installation on Industrial Ave and Stevens Street. I will now open the public hearing for those wishing to speak in favor. Those wishing to speak in favor, please come to the podium, give your name and address if you would.
Philip Corsi, lead engineer, National Grid, Waltham. Here to petition the city to install an underground duct bank that'll run along, beginning at Chelmsford Street, runs down Industrial Ave until it reaches the river. At the river, it becomes the state layout, continues around the Rotary to East Industrial Ave. It's roughly 2,400 feet, a little less than a half a mile long. The reason for this underground duct bank is we are upgrading our facilities at our Meadowbrook substation to improve power to the area, reliability, and service. The upgrades include beefing up the transmission line to the substation and then bringing those feeders out to Industrial Ave and heading in both directions. And those feeders will serve the southern part of Lowell with new, more robust facilities. We are, and our contractors, experienced in doing this kind of work. We know it's always disruptive to traffic when we work, but we have plans together to use a clean trench method that allows us to shorten our work zones to roughly 150 feet, allow for two-way traffic with police details. We'll have signboards on the both ends, you know, warning people of the traffic zone. We will present a single point of contact throughout construction. I have with me tonight John Upham from our Community Relations Group. And we would be looking to start this project possibly in the late spring. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Question, Council Leahy? We'll do it.
Sure. What's the timeline on it then? How long is it going to take?
For this construction, in total, about 2 to 3 months.
Okay. And then does it boost the power going towards the Highlands or just South Lowell?
It boosts the power in really all of South Lowell below the river, and especially on the west side.
The west side would be going, where would the west side be going?
Highlands.
Yeah, the Lowell connector would be running north and south, and then we would be heading in a northerly direction on the other side of the Lowell connector, as well as up 110 and Chelmsford Street.
All right. So west, it would go up towards
The Highlands.
the Highlands, because they're having problems up by, this is going to take care of the problems up by Westview Road and Mount Pleasant and all that?
I'm not sure it will take care of that, but that's the direction that it will, these improvements are designed to address.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? We'll close that portion of the meeting, of the hearing. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone in opposition? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of the hearing. What is the wish of the body?
Move approval.
Move approval?
Refer to the wire
Yeah.
inspector.
Motion to refer to the wire inspector by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries.
Number 16.
We will now go to report subcommittee. Special meeting of last night. If there's no objection from members, I will just give a very brief recap of the meeting, but the City Council met last night in special meeting and to discuss the appointment of an acting city manager. Our city clerk, Mr. Geary, is appointed last night on a 9-0 vote, and he'll serve until beginning March 11th, March 10th at noon, and serve until we have a new city manager. And that really is the report. That was all that took place last night. Council Belanger?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's very appropriate that this council acknowledges that on Monday morning on WCAP, 7 to 10 a.m., there was a business roundtable of some business leaders here in the city of Lowell that conducted a roundtable and gave initiatives and ideas to the table. And I'd like to thank the following individuals: Bob Caruso, Elkin McCallum, George Barakis, and Mark O'Neill for their service to their city. When these individuals speak, I listen. I don't, and they had some many great ideas, initiatives that they brought to the table, and I would like to thank them publicly for their service.
If I could just entertain a motion to accept the report on the special meeting by Council Mercia, seconded by Council Milonazo. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So Council Belanger was...
So with that being said, again, thank you to these individuals. That I thank them for their service to the city. And there's an Economic Development Subcommittee meeting scheduled for February the 18th at 5:30, where we hope to take up some of these initiatives at that time. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councilor. So clerk will make note of that, and he'll post a number of agenda items that have been referred to that subcommittee. Thank you. Any other reports or planned subcommittees? Councilor Milonazo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's probably time for the zoning subcommittee to call a subcommittee meeting to talk about the proposed transitional zoning proposal for the Rogers Street area. I know that there was a meeting, I believe it was in December, and the council did have an initial subcommittee meeting, so I would like to just notify my colleagues, Councilor Kennedy and Councilor Belanger, that I'd like to get that back to the zoning subcommittee, so I'll probably call a meeting during the month of February. Thank you.
All set, Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Belanger? Great. Thank you, Councilor Milonazo. Excuse me. Further reports? Further updates? The solicitor wanted just a moment. I guess while we're under reports, it's sort of a report. It's more of an introduction. But Madam Solicitor, if there's no objection, she'd just like to introduce a member of her staff. Madam Solicitor?
Thank you. With me this evening is Michael Carlson. Michael has been an attorney in our office since this past summer, and I think he's the only member in the office that has not yet appeared before the council for an introduction. Michael is an honors graduate of Harvard Law School. He has a master's degree from the University of Virginia, and he has his law degree from University of Michigan. He also comes to us, or came to us, with approximately 10 years of litigation experience in a variety of, from a variety of firms, mainly in the New York City area. And Michael was with me this evening because of the work on the panhandling ordinance. He was very involved in that and had done a lot of the research as well for the council. And so I just
well, just to say thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Great. Well, welcome. We're glad that you are joining us. That was short and sweet. That's very good. So thank you, Madam Solicitor, and we'll look forward to seeing you at other meetings. Further discussion? Moving on to the next item on the agenda, there's petitions. We have one claim for property damage. Motion to refer to the Law Department by Council Belanger, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Under miscellaneous, we have BMH University LLC Attorney James Flood requests license for overhanging sign at 124 University Ave. Motion to refer to the Law Department by Council Kennedy, seconded by Council Leahy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, under miscellaneous, 1400 Motors LLC. Again, Attorney James Flood requests that the SMU zone located adjacent to said parcels, including the property at 1400 and 1422 Gorham Street, be extended to include the parcels located at 1422.1 and 1434.1 Gorham Street. Motion to refer to Law Department by Council Leahy, seconded by Council Martin. Discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Another, again under miscellaneous, we have Mr. and Mrs. Robert Gordon request to address the City Council meeting regarding easement at 135 Beacon Street.
Good evening. I'm Claudia Gordon. I live at 135 Beacon Street. I was here to speak with you guys in the fall in support of a sidewalk, and I'll make my points fairly brief. I get tired of talking about this sidewalk. So I just wanted to come before you guys because I received some advice that you should be aware of what's been happening specifically in the last 2 weeks. My husband and I are now trying to sort out where we are currently and how to finally resolve this issue and have everything said and done. But what's come to light is that there has been a misunderstanding in the fall where my husband and I believed that we were granting the city an easement. Our two conditions with the developer Daly was that the structure and the construction not affect the integrity of our house and that this not become our problem and our responsibility. And with that, he had our permission to continue the construction on the sidewalk. The problem now is that the actual easement before us is our responsibility and our liability and our responsibility for maintenance of the wall, which is explicitly what my husband and I conveyed as conditions that we did not want to be involved in. So our disappointment on finding this out was, fairly obvious, and we made it known to, I think, every single department in the city, as well as Daly and his legal staff. There's so many things. So I also want to bring to light the hypothetical situation where a third party drafts a disagreeable easement. It gets submitted to the city and potentially gets passed, because at the point when I brought this to the attention of the city that my husband and I had not even seen a copy of the easement, it had already been approved by engineering and was on its way to be signed by, I believe, the mayor's office. And this could be my misunderstanding, but from what I gathered from the legal department, it seems like this could have happened without the property owners having even read or been aware of a legal document that gave us liability and more responsibility. So if this is the actual situation, and this may not be your department, I would like somebody in Lowell to change something about the policy to make sure that the actual property owner would have to sign the easement. Because as this situation stood, I couldn't believe that it could happen as it was happening. Another part of this that I'd like everyone to be aware of is that the attempts to inform us or involve us of these specifics, which, as the misunderstanding came from the fall, who knows where it went wrong, but there was only mail being sent to our house the day before it was actually submitted to the city. So the likelihood that we would receive the mail, have reviewed it, possibly had our legal people review it, and had input on this, it's just very unlikely. And that's not the city's fault, but that is the situation of this entire happening. So what I would like from the council is to be directed any sort of ideas, solutions for this issue, because now we have a finished product in which we were, not to say misled, but had a very different understanding of the course that this was taking. And so from what we've discussed with some lawyers and attorneys, it sounds like the understanding that we had was that we were granting the city an easement, and this was going to become a city piece of land. So if you guys can tell us who else to speak to, what else to do about this, because it doesn't sound like Daly can take responsibility of this or fix it. Legally, he can't own a 12-inch section of land abutting either side. And this is something that we didn't want to be dealing with, and we did not agree to, and we didn't see the legal language until last week. And then just the last thing I want to mention before I end is that in speaking with so many different departments, I quite a few times got the examples of, well, you have to understand where the city is coming from, and if your neighbor accidentally built a wall half on your property, half on theirs, you wouldn't want to take responsibility of it. I understand, because I'm that neighbor. So in my eyes, every situation that could be argued on why the city doesn't want to take this easement or responsibility of it, it's the same for us. We walked into this and we had a very different understanding of what was happening. So unfortunately, the city and us, we're in the same boat here. Nobody wants this wall, but obviously something has to happen. So any suggestions? I'm very
Mr. Manager.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if I have a suggestion per se, and I'll be happy to talk to the solicitor, and we can work with you to see if maybe a meeting of the minds here to see what. But I think is the way you've described it. There clearly was some misunderstanding here because the city wasn't seeking an easement. What happened is the wall was put on city property, so whoever put the wall there needed an easement from the city to put it onto city property. And as I think you just gave the example, is the same example I would give if someone put a wall or a fence or something on your property, you might tell them to remove it, or you might say, well, you can have it, I'll give you an easement that you can keep it there, but you're now liable for anything that happens. And so clearly you understand that the city's position here is that someone put a wall on city property, wasn't an act by us. We obviously have the ability to say, remove it, but clearly we didn't want to do that because it benefited your property, as I understand it. But we would usually, if someone's going to put something on city property, they come to us ahead of time and ask us, can they do it? And then we'll say, well, yes, we'll give you an easement, and these are the conditions. In this case, it was just put on city property, and so now we find ourselves with the liability on us. So it's either remove it or so. But I think we'd be happy to sit down and kind of talk through some different scenarios if the solicitor agrees with me or not.
Madam Solicitor.
Sure, and first of all, we certainly would be, as the manager had indicated, clearly, we would always sit down and be willing to explore anything. And in fact, I think, although I hadn't met you, I had, during the course of the week when this had come about, my understanding is that you did in fact end up dealing with a couple of people in our office. And that's what they were trying to do. With respect to the issues that were raised, I don't know that it's anything that the council can do in terms of notice, because really what happened in this case is that the city was under the impression that when we received documentation from the attorney seeking the grant of easement, that we had assumed that the party that he was representing was aware that they were being represented by him. And that, quite frankly, was the problem. And it turned out that that wasn't, sadly, the case. The language that was contained in the easement that came to the city is standard language that we have in all of our, I can't think of a single easement where we don't have language regarding indemnification of the city and insurance requirements. And as far as after the other meeting, the only thing that I can state is that pursuant to the direction of the council, the law department immediately and repeatedly contacted the builder seeking to have this resolved. And it wasn't until recently, I think perhaps because of another development that was going on, that this one, they were told this needed to be cleared up first, and that's how this issue came about.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Please.
So the one thing that I did want to mention, I'll put this out there first, is just in contrast to what I heard from some of the people speaking on this topic in the fall, just thank you to all the city departments, because the responsiveness that I received last week when we had this shock was incredible. And we didn't have dealings with the city last fall when people were, criticizing some different things, but I was very happily pleased with how responsive the law department was, clerks, everything. They were very helpful, so thank you to that. The only other two notes that I would like to make is that, yeah, exactly as you said, we're in the same position where 6 inches of this wall was put on our property, with our verbal permission upon 2 conditions, and at that point, these 2 conditions are kind of being broken right now. So can I redact my verbal permission? I don't know, but the last thing is the city's suggestion of removing the wall. I did want to address because I have heard that from the engineering department, but I know this is an atypical situation because of kind of the path this construction has traveled. However, if there was ever to be a sidewalk erected there, the city and engineer, nobody would ever have put the sidewalk without a wall, or they wouldn't put the sidewalk at all. You wouldn't do something so irresponsible to damage a structure. So if we remove the wall, fill it back in. I really don't care. I support the sidewalk because the neighborhood wants it, but not at the liability, possible damage to my house or anything of that nature. Then I don't support it.
So can I suggest that you, that the manager and
Yeah, take
and
it to
you,
a meeting.
get together and have a meeting?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Okay, motion to refer to the city manager and the law department by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. On the motion, Councilor Kennedy?
On the motion, so after that's squared away, will we get a report back? Can that be part of this motion?
Motion to refer to the law department, have that squared away, and report back to the city council. Good idea. Thank you, Councilor Kennedy. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed? Motion carries. Next item is National Grid and Verizon NE requests pole location at 59 South Whipple Street. Motion to refer to the wire inspector by Council Martin. Second, wire inspector and report and recommendation.
Should be public hearing.
Sorry, it's referred to a public hearing. It's okay. February 18th. By Council Martin, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed? Motion carries. Oh, that's okay. So next item on the agenda, moving into the motion portion of the agenda. City Council motions. First motion by Councilor Rourke, request Public Safety Subcommittee meet with the police superintendent to explore the implementation of a shot spotter program in the city. Second by Councilor Samaras. Councilor Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion before us tonight requests the Public Safety Committee meet with the Superintendent of the Police Department to explore the use of a shot spotter technology in the city of Lowell. With the recent uptick in violence, particular in gun violence, has our residents and our community on edge. This technology provides the police department with real-time alerts in the areas where it is deployed. Shot spotter technology can alert the police as to where, when, and how many shots are fired. It also has the ability to indicate the shooter's position. The system now is currently being used in Boston, Springfield, and in Worcester. While there is no substitution for law enforcement on the ground and in the neighborhoods connecting and developing relationships with our residents, this technology will be a tool to enhance their ability to be efficient with residents and effective on a larger scale. Unless shots that are fired are reported by a caller, they go unnoticed. This technology will provide a direct reporting system so that officers can be dispatched directly. In addition, this tool would serve to better protect both our law enforcement personnel and the community by giving a complete picture of the incident before they walk into such situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion? Councilor Belanger.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the maker of the motion. Councilor, I like being on the Public Safety Committee. I think this could be a very, very effective measure against gun violence. So I do like it from the get-go. I know there's much to be learned. Now, have you been in contact with the delegation regarding possibly some funding for this? And may I ask?
Councilor Rourke.
Yes, I have. The goal going forward, if motion passes, would be to have the representatives from the program come to speak to the subcommittee, hopefully set to the date where it does come to the city council with the superintendent involved. Obviously, there's a cost to such programs, and depending on placement, how widely it is used, and so forth. So today's the first step. As stated before, other large cities in Massachusetts do use it. They find it very valuable and informative when such incidents do occur. So that's the hope going forward tonight.
Excellent. I like what I see thus far. I'm very encouraged to see this, and if we can get grant funded, that's bonus. So I look forward to this on the Public Safety Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Next item again is by Council Rourke. Request City Council discuss trash recycle pickup schedule. Second, by Council Kennedy. Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, to you too, the manager. Mr. Manager, just with regards to the few complaints I have received concerning this, especially with storms and so forth. And once again, is there a threshold that's decided beforehand of when the recycle and trash pickup would be delayed, such instances such as that?
Mr. Manager?
Yeah, the initial rollout, obviously coming midweek, changing over contractors caused some issues. We did have a catch up on that. Of course, the storms have really impacted us. The number of complaints and issues have dropped down. We are working to get more ahead of, like for instance, tomorrow we've already delayed the pickup of trash and recycling by 1 day. So we'll be working on into the weekend because the storm is so large that we'll be getting. So we try to get out as much as we can in terms of information as quickly as we can. But I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, though.
Is there an instance, sorry, Mr. Mayor, an instance where it would be canceled, the mode of communication as to letting the residents know it will be delayed?
Sure. Yeah, we're doing the website. We let I've already saw that it was on the breaking news in the Lowell Sun. We let CAP know. We have an alert system that people can sign up for messaging. The other one is that I asked them to try to do, and I'm not sure if they were able to do it today, but we have a new telephone alert system called the Code Red that we use for public safety announcements. In this one, I asked that they do that, and again, I haven't gotten word whether they were able to utilize that fully, but to let people know that the parking ban was in effect at midnight. That's certainly a public safety, and then it did come through?
We got calls.
Then did it come through on the trash too?
It came through at work and at home.
Councilor Rourke, I rest my case. Thank you.
All set, Councilor? Okay. No, I agree, Mr. Manager. We've been receiving, during the week, we did receive some more calls, and I think they're getting used to the routes, and so we refer them to Gunther, and he's taking care of them. But, I mean, I think moving forward tomorrow, I think the last storm that they canceled, anticipating a lot of snow, we didn't get the snow, so it was a little bit of confusion because we told folks not to put the barrels out, and the snow didn't come, so we told them to put them out. But unfortunately, or regrettably, it looks like tomorrow people should not put their barrels out because of the snow.
Okay. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. And the opposed, motion carries. Next item by Council Milanazzo, request city manager report on any outstanding claims against contractors, subcontractors, or suppliers associated with the new schools built under the MSBA program. Seconded by Councilor Samaras. Council Milanazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and actually probably Councilor Leahy, spending so much time on the school committee, can actually weigh in on this motion as well. But in voting on the letters of interest that we voted on last week to the MSBA for a number of schools to have some work done, it struck me that a number of these schools, and again, I know time goes by quickly, but a number of these schools, in fact, most of the schools were our new school buildings that were built under the program back in the mid-'80s. And I recall, just anecdotally, but I recall that when the buildings came online, roofs were leaking, HVAC systems weren't working, plumbing wasn't working in a number of the buildings, sinks and science labs after a couple of 3 years were pitted. So I just didn't know if we had any claims against contractors, subcontractors, and or vendors that are still outstanding in light of the fact that we're now applying to MSBA for work to be done on new school buildings, in my opinion. So I'm looking for a report from the city manager because we spent an awful lot of money building these new schools that were needed to be built. But at the end of the day, I know that, again, anecdotally, Councilor Leahy may have more information, but some of the schools, when they went online, had problems immediately. So I'm looking for a report. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Council Leahy?
Thank you. No, I like the motion. It's a good motion. It's good to get a lot of this housekeeping up to date, and thank you for putting the motion on, because it is a problem. You have brand-new schools, and there's always something going wrong. Something's dripping, something's leaking, so this will be good to get a report on it. Thank you for putting it on.
All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Next motion by Council Belanger. Request City Council refer current parking ordinance to the Economic Development Subcommittee for review. Second by Council Kennedy. We have a registered speaker.
Yes, Karen Bell.
Thank you. And Mayor Elliott, it's very nice to be able to say that, finally. And city
Thank you, Ms.
councilors.
Bell. I concur.
Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I also have to say, since it's probably the last public time I get to say it, Adjur, Bernie, and you have done a wonderful job managing the city as a business. Okay, your business was so good that mine suffered with all of the fees and fines, et cetera, that you thought up. So, but still like you there, Bernie.
I didn't think them up, we just enforced them.
All right. I'm taking this opportunity really to talk about the same thing that I talked about 30 years ago, the very first time I came in front of the City Council, and that is about economic development. And it's very interesting to me that sitting here this whole evening, that was the majority of what was coming out of your mouths, was economic development. Why do we need it? We need it, first of all, to increase that tax base, right? So that that commercial tax is not continuing to climb over and over and over that $30 mark as it is. And that we don't have to then raise the property taxes of our residents either, over that $15. So how do we go about this? And one of the things that I've learned over the past 30 years in Lowell and looking around, it is not reality that ever drives economic development. It is perception. When I first came to Lowell, came to Middlesex Street, there were several businesses on Middlesex Street which were well-established, very respectable, and they were successful. It was Norman's, Men's Shop, Parrot Hatter, Garnick's. Garnick's is still there. And even Elliott's at that time was a fairly vibrant restaurant. But they were fighting the perception of a neighborhood that was unsafe. And that caused several of these businesses to actually start folding. Norman's folded mainly because of the perception that it was not safe to go down there and buy a pair of pants. Same with Mellet, the Parrot Hat Shop. He had customers from all over the country, but he couldn't get anyone down on Middlesex Street in Lowell. Again, it was a perception, because it was a safe neighborhood. I closed the business around 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, female alone. I never had a problem. I've had female managers all through the time that I've been there, and I've never really had a problem. But it was that perception of something being unsafe. And thank goodness that Ed Davis came along and he changed that perception. But he understood also that it was not the reality. He put neighborhood precincts around. He didn't necessarily man them all the time. But the perception was, when you had assigned police out there, that there was that presence. Might not have been the reality. So as you were saying, Corey, that sometimes just, even though you're losing 2 parking spots, which are critical in Lowell, you also have the perception of police presence, which helps a business. So why about parking? Okay. Why about parking? Well, it's not about the 2 hours that are going to be extended to actually meet the time which is in the ordinance. It's about us wanting to become a trendy, affordable, welcoming bedroom community. Good for people to move out of Cambridge, out of Boston, where they can't park and they get ticketed up until 8 o'clock at night. It's for the perception that we are actually welcoming to businesses. We have to do the things that are necessary to say to a restaurant, I'm not going to try to give you a problem having somebody come here after work at 5 o'clock. Now, you have meters out there, and hopefully everyone has gone to bed now and they're not realizing this, that those meters say that the ordinance goes until 6 and it's also on Saturday. You do collect money, because a lot of people don't know that there aren't meter maids out there at that time. So now we're going to enforce it. Once you start putting tickets on people's cars at 6 o'clock at night when they go to Cobblestones, or they go to any of the other restaurants in the city, then the perception changes dramatically as to what we want in this city, how we want to bring people in. And one of the things that I do know, right now, the floating of that job for a meter maid to be brought on from 10 to 6, Monday through Friday, is going to, once that floats by, the ordinance also does include Saturday. And I can just imagine what happens on Saturday if we start enforcing that ordinance for parking in the city of Lowell. We want business downtown. We need people downtown. We need people in those businesses. The reality is you'll still have people plugging quarters in those meters. It's the reality. I see them do it all the time. But the perception once they receive a ticket on their windshield is that Lowell is not a place where I want to go. Now, I'm not crying poor me, even though once you guys plunk that registry in across the street from me, my day business is done. The reality for me is going to be that if we start ticketing, and I know where they'll be ticketing, they're going to ticket where they find the most cars, yes? They'll find the most cars between 4 and 8 o'clock in front of my place. Right now, I spend in the neighborhood of $45,000 a year for the privilege of running my business in Lowell. My property taxes, my fees, my et cetera. Parking, I validate parking in my business. Right now, parking costs me more than $10,000 a year to validate for my clients. But I do know that the majority of my clients who come in after 4 o'clock are female, and they will not go into the garage to park for several reasons. Not the reality. The reality is the garages I find are safe. It's a perception that they don't want to go park in a garage, walk down the streets, which now are beautifully gaslit, which means that they're not very light. So think in terms, and I hope this new city council will constantly look at things, as I've seen you tonight, which was very nice to see. Looking at things, what is the perception that we are giving? What are we saying to a business that wants to come into this community, whether it's a new restaurant, et cetera? Are we here just to make money from the businesses and make money from the people who come into Lowell? Yes, we want to support the city, but I think that there are perhaps better ways to do it than putting this roadblock to people to come in and enjoy all the wonderful businesses that we have in here, or to attract more, to increase this tax base. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Council
Mr. Mayor,
Belanger.
I'd like
and
to give,
then
I think the
Mr.
manager wants to respond to that, so I'll let the manager speak
Sure,
first.
okay, Mr. Manager.
No, I know, Council, thank you. I know this is your motion, and I just wanted to clarify, we're not changing anything with regards to the ordinance. It's still, you know, it is what it is. We stop enforcing at 4 o'clock, and we're not going to be changing that. We're not going to be changing the Saturday. You know, very frankly, it would almost be my hope that someday we will, that the city will, because at some point in time, I'm hopeful that there'll be such a demand for parking after 4 o'clock and on Saturdays that it's the equivalent of what it is during the day. The purpose of parking meters is not to raise revenue. I think most of us know that. It does. It pays for the parking enforcement officers and pays for other aspects of the entire parking operation. But the real purpose of meters is to help regulate parking so that people don't park their car in front of a business for an entire day, whether it be the employees, customers, that then take up spaces that other customers can't use in front of a particular business, or in many cases, has been my experience in other communities certainly, it's often the business owner who takes that prime spot right in front, and I've certainly encountered that in my career. But there's no change. I know that we've advertised a parking attendant to work 10 to 6. That's to help with some other enforcement issues that we have with people parking in handicap spots, people parking on crosswalks, people parking in front of hydrants. And it's largely to provide a city staff person that will be in the parking operation that has access to our city software system, so that we can give out the resident. We have a number of residents that can't get here during the day, so they come in between 4 and 6 to get their visitor passes, their resident parking stickers, and so on. We don't, right now we're staffing that largely with overtime, and so we'd like to be able to have someone that can work the office, occasionally go out and handle the other types of violations, be available to work when we have special events taking place at the arena or at the ballpark or somewhere else in the city that we need to have some enforcement. But it's not to change the enforcement of the ordinance to start enforcing between 4 and 6, just so there's clarification on that.
Thank you. Council Belanger?
Can I get that in writing?
You better. You have it on videotape.
Council Belanger?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I think what's appropriate here is some disclosure for my colleagues, for the administration, the viewers at home, that although the parking ordinance is citywide, I am a businessman here in downtown Lowell, which has meters in the street, so I've been cleared by the Ethics Commission to bring the motion forward and discuss the issue in its full extent. So I am very happy to get that news. I believe this is a very, very important issue. The motion stems from businesses such as Karen and others who let me know that I was unaware of a posting that the manager just indicated in Human Resources about a meter enforcement officer, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, the manager did just clarify what's going on, but them seeing that, what were they to think? What was I to think? We all know the meter maids are out there in full force until 4 o'clock. We all know that is no secret. That's their job. That's what we want them to do. However, the last thing businesses need, citywide, is meter maids enforcing till 6 o'clock. That would be catastrophic in my mind. So perhaps it was an early gut reaction, Mr. Manager. However, I mean, I think if your goal is internally, it sounds like the position, I mean, if there's problems with handicaps and hydrants, I understand enforcing that till 6, but can police officers do that? Or, because I don't want them to be on the street and end up ticketing cars till 6 p.m. I know the ordinance says that. Okay, so I would like to get a motion to refer this to the Economic Development Subcommittee. And I'm going to be perfectly honest, I'm going to lay it on the table here. My ultimate goal is to change the parking ordinance. After public hearings and several discussions with my colleagues and businessmen throughout the city, I think the parking ordinance ultimately should be rolled back, scaled back. 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday to Friday. No nights, no weekends. Now, as Karen stated, yes, people are feeding the meters. People, tourists and visitors who come, who are unaware, are pumping money into these machines. I don't like to lose revenue either. But the big, in the large, grand scheme of things, businesses need some help. And I think it'd be beneficial to them to be able to advertise on social media, newspapers, free on-street parking now. I'm not asking for any relief in garages, that's a whole different ballgame. But I think it'd be beneficial if businesses were able to say free nights and weekends on street. I think would be helpful. Okay, there's lots of small things we could be doing to help it. We got two-way traffic coming in the summer. I think that's going to benefit. I think this would benefit. We're a long way from getting it done. I understand there'll be many hurdles, but this is what I'd like to see. I think it'd be very, very helpful. So it's going to involve, a public hearing and a subcommittee, but ultimately, that's my goal, and I just want to make that clear to my colleagues so there's no mystery. And I urge them to support me on this because it's much needed. And again, what I strongly want to reiterate to my colleagues is that parking is not enforced after 4. So we're losing a little bit people who are feeding unbeknownst, who are feeding, because the kiosks read 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Now, what we're doing is borderline fraudulent. We're not enforcing that. So people are unwillingly coming and putting money in. And Mr. Manager, this ordinance has been in place for 20 years. It's not your ordinance. I know. I'm not saying you did it. I'm just saying I don't agree with it. It's been in place, and I'd like it changed, quite frankly. So we got a lot of work to do, Mr. Mayor. I would like to hear the input from my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Further discussion, Councilor Rita Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're always hearing from people that say, what are you going to do to help the businesses? And I really don't know how we could help them, but this motion is a first start effort on how we can make a difference. They pay a double tax rate. They sacrifice their time and energy and finances to set up shop in this city, whether it be downtown or any neighborhood that has a meter in front of their property. And yet, I like to generate revenue too, but not at the expense to hurt businesses. And I think this is a first-rate effort in the beginning to start. I wholeheartedly support this. If we have to change the ordinance to say specifically that, I would do everything I can to make that happen. I think we're handing out an olive branch to tell them that we're sincerely trying to start somewhere to help you. I think this is it. When a family comes home from work and they gather the rest of the family and they go downtown to eat, or they go into a certain neighborhood to park on the street to go in at dinner time to get a meal for their family, I don't think they'd like to come out and see a ticket on their car because we enforced it, and it's only 5:30, for gosh sakes. I think this is a good effort. It's a good motion. I wholeheartedly support it. I want to help the businesses, and this is a way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a good motion, too, and the motion is referred to, or will be referred to, the Economic Development Subcommittee, which is, I think, probably where it belongs. I think that there are other cities where they allow 2 hours of free parking in their central business district in order to welcome shoppers or people in. Now, most of those communities maybe have a central business district that is more vibrant than ours is right now, but nevertheless, that isn't a bad idea, I think, or something that we can look at. And I think that because we have the kiosk system in place, that the traffic department probably knows where all the tickets have been written and where all the money comes from and how much money comes from each street and so forth. And so we can really take the Economic Development Subcommittee could really take a hard look at whether or not it makes sense to make any changes in the existing ordinance or just the whole parking policy as a whole. And so I think this is I think this is a good idea. And I think we should take a look at it. I think we have to keep in mind that, when I came on the council 2 years ago, I was probably a little bit more in favor of free parking downtown than I am today, because I realized when we got to the first budget, just how much revenue is raised through parking. And so you have to weigh that against the tax rate and so forth. And so that's something that has to be considered as well. Nevertheless, this is certainly worth taking a good look at.
Councilor, go ahead, Mr. Manager.
Counselor, just for clarification, though, just so the public is informed on this, none of the parking meter revenue goes to do anything with the tax rate. It only goes to the parking enterprise.
Councilor
Yes, but
Kennedy.
it's still money coming into the city.
But goes to the parking enterprise.
Yeah.
Councilor Rourke.
Just a quick question, Mr. Matthews, to the manager. Is there kind of bouncing off of Councilor Kenny's idea, could you get a report to the council concerning the breakdown of the kiosk of what they make, and even break it down from 4 to 6, or on Saturdays if the money in there?
Yeah, we can get that type of report. We can do all types of reports that are quite comprehensive on that. It might take a little time to pull it all together and map it out. The other thing I think that council should take into consideration, though, as they review this, is really to look to the expertise of the urban planning type of people that deal with parking policies. There is a misunderstanding. As I said, there's a misunderstanding as to why you charge for parking and what type of impact it has. And there's quite a bit of much more information out there that needs to be looked at. It's not just a simple, if you put free parking, people are going to come. What happens in many communities is exactly the opposite. When you put free parking, as I said, people just come in and take up the spaces, and then there's no parking, and people stay away. If they have parking, and the other part of it is that a big part of our parking operation is our garages, and the meters don't just pay for the meters. I will tell you that. That's pretty clear. The meters also help to the overall, because to factor that in, you'd have to say, okay, how much do we bring in the meters, and how much does it cost to have the meter attendance and the maintenance of the meters and so on? And we make a little bit more than that, but that goes right back into the parking operation, so that it helps supplement the garages, which are the real success of Lowell. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the residential development that we have in the downtown area, or the larger users that we have in the downtown area. Certainly, the businesses like Enterprise Bank and large users like that, they're not going to get their parking from the meters, the metered spaces. They're going to get their parking from the garages. If we're not able to properly maintain and operate the garages, then businesses like that are not going to locate in the downtown area. So there's a lot more that goes into this than just, there's some free parking out in front of a business. It does have much more complexities than that that have to be looked at.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, motion by Council Leahy. Request city manager provide an update regarding meeting with National Grid and Verizon regarding double poles, or set date for a meeting if applicable. Second by Council Kennedy. Council Leahy.
Thank you. I didn't realize I had missed the December 3rd meeting, and I guess there was a couple of representatives here at that time, and I understand that there'll be another meeting sometime in April, but I did speak to the assistant city manager, and it's just still my perception that the poles aren't coming out fast enough. And I understand that things slow down in the winter, and but come April, I'd like to see that the council asks for a report on how many come out. There's still poles, and maybe we can even make an ordinance. I don't know why there's shattered poles around. I can see that they're waiting to take lines down and this and that, but even now when you look around, there's shattered poles that are broken in half that, there's no reason that they should be in the ground still. And this is just a nuisance, and I know we bring it up, and there's probably 10 other more important things that we should be talking about. This is just a public nuisance and sometimes a safety issue on some of the broken ones. But I'll wait till the April meeting. I didn't realize that they were here just a few weeks ago, so I'll kind of take the motion off or just let it go at this point.
Council Kennedy.
I seconded the motion because I think it's a good motion. I think that Council Leahy should be commended for his tenacity And I think this is an issue that's been problematic in the city for many years, and and in order for us to get results, I think we need to be the squeaky wheel. And I think that this motion, even coming just, maybe a month and a half or 2 months after we had the representatives from the utilities in, it's still, I think it's still a good motion, and we still have to be vigilant about this if we're going to continue to seek further reductions as far as double poles go. So I think I'm happy to support the motion. I think it's good, and that you should do it every few months.
All those in favor of the, further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Next item, next motion by Council Leahy. Request city manager provide a report regarding all utility work being done by National Grid, including maintenance and emergency repairs on gas lines. Seconded by Council Milonazo. Council Leahy.
Thank you. The intent of this motion is I'd just like to get an idea of, I know we get the weekly reports on what's happening throughout the city, but I've noticed in a few neighborhoods, and particularly in my neighborhood, sometimes we have an odor of gas, and they come up, the National Grid comes up, they do a test, and they say that there's nothing wrong, they're within the meters, or they're within the markings. But then, could be a month, could be 2 months later, they're up there digging. So if there's not a problem, why 3 months later or 2 months later are they up there digging? So I'd just like to get some good, honest answers on, are there, and I know that they're doing maintenance along the way, and they're changing lines out that are old. But I'd just like to get some more information for the neighbors and the neighborhoods, so that we know what's going on. So when we do report an odor, that we want to just make sure it's being taken, I don't want to say serious, but I just want to make sure that we know that, if there's a problem, we know that it's going to be taken care of in a short time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Next item, next motion by Council Leahy. Request city manager have proper department provide update on fire damaged buildings throughout the city. Said update to include the status of said buildings. Seconded by Council Martin. All those, Council Leahy.
Thank you. Again, just some housekeeping. We put a motion on about, maybe it was a year ago, July, just to see what progress we've made in this field, in this, with this issue, and how we're moving along, and how we're, I've seen a few buildings that have come down, and we're making some progress on this. But again, it's just to help out the neighborhoods and to make sure that we're staying on top of this issue, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that buildings are restored and brought back to what they once were before their fire. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye, and the opposed, motion carries. Last motion of the night by Councilor Mercia. Request city manager have proper department properly mark parking spaces on Dublin Street, the Council on Aging side, as parking for COA, Council on Aging employees only. Seconded by Councilor Rourke. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. About a year or so ago, I made a motion to address the parking needs at the senior center by asking for about 5 or 6 more spots to be designated for senior parking on Dublin Street, the side that abuts the senior center. I wasn't talking about the other side. I think it's the housing authority, and the people that live there have the right to park in front of their home. We're not talking about that. But I asked that the signs that were installed that indicated no parking at all, tow zone, be modified to allow seniors to park on the other side on Dublin Street. And it was apparent, I thought that, I never heard any more, so I thought that it was a given. When you don't hear any complaints, I figured it was done, but they were telling me at the meeting the other day that that never took place. I did get I save everything, so I happen to have had the response from like a year ago, and the sign shop said they would honor that, and I don't believe they did. I took a look at that, and I thought to myself, maybe if we could put maybe 3 or 4 signs that say Council on Aging parking. I know that we can do that. If you go on Kirk Street, it says parking for clergy only. That's the clergy. I don't know why on Summer Street, it says parking for Sheriff's Department employees, so I don't know why we can't put parking for Council on Aging employees. Therefore, if we get a few of the people that are employees to park there, that frees up some spots in the lot itself for the seniors. If we could refer this to the traffic engineer, Eric Eby, he's still with us in the city, right? He hasn't left, right?
I'll check in the morning.
Okay, well, I wonder if they're still there, but this time I'm really adamant to be checking this out to see if we can get those spots. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? So ordered. Counsel Marcia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last item, if I could suspend the rules and just talk about how the transformation in this room every week improves more and more. The walls are painted now. The floor has new carpeting, but also an insignia that says that art is the handmaid of human good. They're doing a tremendous job here. Mr. Harmon, really, congratulations to him and everybody that is coming in here to make this a work of art. Not only is it complementing the room, but we have heat in the winter. God almighty, what a country. It's just great.
Motion to suspend the rules by Counsel Mercy to talk about what you talked about, seconded by Counsel Belanger. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? So ordered. Counselor, I completely concur. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Council, I do think a great deal of credit and thanks has to go to Mr. Harmon and all the people in his group that have been doing this. I also want to give a shout out, though, to the DPW workers who have done really much of this work, and they've really done a great job. And I'm glad you appreciate the heat and hopefully the air conditioning in the chamber in the summer. 2 of my greater accomplishments while I've been city manager.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Thanks go out to Counsel Leahy, too, who spearheaded this effort, too. So, job well done. Motion to adjourn by Counsel Samaras, seconded by Counsel Rourke. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? So ordered. Have a great night.